let's get started. Thank you, Rita. So we're here to talk today about Google Maps. It's one of my favorite things. There's a reason why I was approached to teach this class, because all of my colleagues and coworkers know that I love to travel on from my desk on Google Maps. You'll probably see in a little bit that I have so many flags and pins all around the world of places that I dream of going to, and then local restaurants that I want to eat a burger at. It's a really fun tool to use for direction. It's a place to explore and travel and learn new things. But there's also some privacy concerns, some data sharing concerns. It's a double-edged sword. So we want to make sure that you understand this and that you're comfortable using this and ready to use this as a library patron and as a world traveler with me. So to get started, what is Google Maps? If you haven't used it before, Google Maps is a virtual mapping tool used primarily for directions and exploration of various sites. I'm kind of a history nerd, so you're going to get a quick lesson on the origins of virtual mapping tools in general. Go ahead and go to the next slide here. As a lot of things, it's actually considered, or you could consider it, a local invention. We can claim it as a Chicago thing. In 1967, the Chicago printing firm R.R. Donnelley & Sons started a division of their printing company called Cartographic Services. They would later move to this branch to Lancaster, Pennsylvania in 1969, but it did start in Chicago, which I think is really cool. The division began generating maps and routes for customers, and they were one of the first corporations to use satellite imagery to use their map to print their maps, which you can see later influences MapQuest. So in 1994, Cartographic Services separated from Donnelley & Sons and renamed itself Geosystems Global Corporation, and they generated the code that created MapQuest. I bet you all used MapQuest at some point or have heard of MapQuest at some point. MapQuest launched in 1996. And it became the world's first online mapping and turn-by-turn direction service. And I just remember how revolutionary it was that you could get turn-by-turn directions. You turn at this street, you go this distance, you turn again. And it changed the way that we looked up directions instead of using an atlas or word of mouth, changed the way that we gave directions. And it was a big deal. And it all started in Chicago. It launched almost a decade before Google Maps and was once so popular and ubiquitous, it became a verb. I still hear people at the library say all the time, oh, can you MapQuest that for me? Or, oh, I don't need directions, I'll just MapQuest it. I just think that's fun. Google Maps didn't launch to compete with MapQuest or any other attempts like here, Apple Maps or Waze until 2004. Initially, a company called Intrinsic Graphics was developing gaming software for video games. And they presented Google with a demo of their 3D software, which was a graphic of a spinning globe that you can zoom into until you were really close to a destination. So it was originally intended to be a video game feature. Google Earth loved it. They bought the idea and they launched Google Earth through a division called Keyhole in 2001. They took that 3D rendering that was meant to become a video game and they used it to show satellite imagery of the Earth so people could explore the globe. It wasn't originally used for directions, but that quickly kicked off. It was used extensively for news coverage during the Iraq War invasion in 2003, if you remember. There was a keyhole icon on a lot of the footage of the Iraq War invasion on CNN and Fox News at the time. And then after that, spinoffs like Google Mars, Google Moon, and Google Street View became really popular, but weren't as practical or user-friendly as what we now have today with Google Maps. For most of the 2000s, folks still relied either on traditional maps and directions or printouts of MapQuest's turn-by-turn. You remember seeing the MapQuest turn-by-turn where it had the little bars of the directions here and there. Sat-navs had been around since the late 1980s, stuff like Magellan, TomTom, or Garmin, but Google Maps was really kicked off by the invention of the smartphone, and they developed their first app for the first Android smartphone, which was the HTC Dream, and you can see that there on the right side of the screen. It was the very first Android smartphone that ran Google Maps, and if you actually look at the picture there, you can see the original icon for Google Maps on the phone. Google Maps, that's my history. I'm sorry if it was boring. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was exciting to sort of see how we came here from a map printing surface to a video game company to a satellite imagery that covers the entire globe world around that you can jump around to and use for all the things that Google is used for, which I think is exciting. Google Maps offers satellite imagery, aerial photography, street maps, 360 interactive panoramic views of streets, which is called Street View. I mentioned that earlier. They also do real-time traffic conditions and route planning for traveling by foot, car, bike, air, and public transportation. It has played roles in major events. It was the first outlet to show extensive devastation caused by Hurricane Katrina. It opened up the world to previously unseen infrastructure in North Korea, and it caused a little bit of controversy because it practically labeled Palestine and Taiwan as independent nations. And it introduced map overlays in the last 2 years to communicate the spread of COVID-19 by area in 2020, based on how significant the spread was in specific areas. And we'll see how that is actually still available to see. Google Maps is being used by over 1 billion people in the world, and that's part of why it's such a strong database and strong system to use. Because it's used by so many people, they gather all the data from those people, and that helps them determine locations, popularity of locations, popularity of routes, as well as conditions on routes along the way. So how should we be using Google Maps? Like I said at the top of this in my introduction, it's kind of a double-edged sword, and we do need to talk about privacy. Just like we talk about in our Navigating the News program here at the library, which we will hopefully be offering sometime late in the summer or early fall again. One of the things that we use in that is there's no such thing as a free lunch. Google Maps doesn't cost anything to download or use, so we have to ask ourselves, what's the catch? The catch is us. Just like Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, pretty much any other online service that is free and you want to use it, we are the product. They make a profit for the company by selling ad space, which we'll see examples of during the demonstration, and collecting and using or selling our data to other advertisers or other institutions. So they are collecting your information and they're using your information to sell ads, which is how they're paying for all the services that you're using. So in essence, somebody can pay Google to make sure that their business shows up first. If you're looking for restaurants, auto repair, a church. Additionally, your visits, your travel, your interactions and searches can be saved and then sold by Google Analytics to a third party for advertising research. So it's a double-edged sword. It really is. And you have to ask yourself, you have to decide how comfortable you are with getting the product of Google Maps and all the recommendations and all the features by using your location and your data, which they will in then turn to make a profit and fund the service that you're using. I think that everybody has to make that decision for themselves. So we want to make sure that you're informed, you have all the information that you need, and that you also know how to protect your privacy if that's not your cup of tea. So the very first thing I'm going to show you is how to turn off your location on your phone and your browser. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my slideshow here. All right, everybody should be able to see my screen. I'm going to go to full screen here. So I'm in Google Maps here, and you can see on my map that I already have a bunch of places that I already like. I like the local grocery store, United Grocers here. It has all this information here, which I can show you in a little bit how to navigate all that information. But you can see that even when I just pull it up, it's already got loaded all the places that I've been, all the places that I want to go, as well as places that I've starred for later reference. So if you want to turn your location off, the quickest and easiest way is to go to myaccount.google.com. Now, if you don't have an account with Google, you can use Google Maps. I can show you in a second with incognito mode what that looks like, and it will be a less of a feature. You have less options. You might need to turn on your location for it to find you originally, or you can just use it based on addresses that you put in there. And in incognito mode, it won't save your data. But If you just go to myaccount.google.com and then go to data and privacy, you can scroll down and it can show you your history settings. And here I have web and app activity on, location history on. So if I want to turn that off, I can click on that and disable my location history. I can also change the permissions in the app on my phone. To do that, you go into settings on your phone. Every phone and every operating system is going to be different, but under settings, there should be a section called privacy or location or both. And under privacy or location is where you're going to find your location and data settings. And you can choose to turn your location off, and it'll usually be set per app. So there's different apps that ask for your location. Burger King wants to know where my location is. Google Maps wants to know where my location is for a lot of different reasons, usually to a mix of selling your location data or selling your use data, as well as making it somewhat more convenient for you. But you can see here, if I click on my maps timeline, it will open up a timeline of my use of the map. And this is where you see the extent of the data saving. You can manage your location history. You can turn that on and off. And then you can also see here all the different places that it's pinged me in my travels. I was down in Indianapolis last weekend, so they see that I've been here and they will save that information. So if that's not something you're comfortable with, you can definitely turn that off by going to myaccount.google.com under data and privacy. All right. As long as you're interacting with Google Maps or logged into a network, whether it's on data or Wi-Fi, your IP address, which is kind of like a digital license plate number, is always going to be shared unless you're using a virtual private network. If you have any interest or questions about VPNs, we can also maybe explore that on tutor time or on another occasion on another possible program. But if you're in a hurry and you don't want your location showed, your data or history gathered, you can also open up an incognito window. For that, you're just going to go down to your Chrome extension. If you're on Firefox or Safari, it's called private browsing. Just go ahead and right click the icon, and you can hit new incognito window. And then from here, you should be able to just type in maps.google.com. And now you'll see the map opens up, but without all of my saved information here. Now it's opening up on the location because it still has my IP address, and incognito mode is not foolproof. It still shares your information with your IS provider, your internet service provider. But at the same time, it doesn't sell so much of your data. It doesn't collect cookies or save your browsing history, and it does protect your identity and your data a little bit better. But again, if you want the features like saving locations, you want the quick recommendations based on your past interest or your past business ratings, you could consider, being logged into an account and just accepting that Google is going to use your data to advertise to you and to sell your analytics. All right. Well, thank you for bearing with me for the history and privacy lessons. I really appreciate it. I think that it's important. Before we move on to the main functions of Google Maps, does anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns? All right. Well, I'll keep monitoring the chat and the question box. If you ask a question, I'd be happy to answer it. In the meantime, we got plenty of time, and I feel a little bit better answering and communicating with questions sometimes than I do just talking. So stick with me on this, and we'll have some fun. I know that somebody who is in the audience sent me an email and requested some information about traveling to Orlando. They're going on a trip to Orlando, and they wanted to see how to maybe navigate to there and look for some stuff. So I'm going to use that as an example at different parts. If you also have some interest in a different feature of Google Maps, just shout it out and we'll navigate it together and we'll do some exploring. But the main use for Google Maps, especially on your app, on your phone, which is just going to be a smaller, more accessible clone of this browser version, is for transit. It provides a route planner, allowing users to find available directions through driving public transportation, walking, or biking. And then last year, they actually offered Google Air. So you can have, if you're an independent pilot, you can use Google Maps to plan your routes and with the FAA. So that's in beta. I don't think anybody here is an independent pilot, but I just thought that was cool to mention. You can start by putting one location into the search bar, and after you establish that location, you can put a second location in to plot your route. So we're going to go ahead and start out with the Warren-Newport Public Library. All right, and you can see it immediately finds the library. And because Google has all of the analytics on everything else, they really took it a next step further from the original MapQuest, and they have all of this information, including contact information, our website, our phone number. This is our copy plus code. This is our geocache information, or no, not our geocache, our GPS information, which I've used in the past for geocaching, and as well as our hours. I will say that you sometimes want to check on these things because they don't update as frequently as our website does. And I know that that's a thing with other businesses too, especially for stuff like holidays. Sometimes it'll tell you when a holiday might affect the hours or if weather might affect the hours. But, for the most part, it's pretty accurate as far as hours go. It'll tell you sometimes based on traffic. So you can see that the library right now is busier than usual. And that's because people who use Google Maps are at our library right now, and they're using that information to tell you how busy we are, just in case you want to maybe avoid it if it's too busy, which I think is probably more relevant for a fast food drive-through than a library. If the library is busy, it's because it's a good place to be right now. As well as user-driven photos, questions and answers, and a rating. So people like us. Friendly staff and a beautiful space to study with rooms available. Awesome. So again, we're in the direction mode. So we want to plot a direction if we're going on vacation to Orlando, Florida. And this is how you put in a direction. So it's asking us for a starting point, and our starting point is Warren-Newport Public Library. So we'll just go ahead and drag this to reorder. And then we're going to put in Orlando, Florida. So it's giving us suggestions. We're going to go for Orlando, Florida, not Orland Park. And this is what's really cool. So it's giving us different options based on different transits. So it's telling us that we can drive, that we can fly, and it's not giving us directions for walking because it's assuming that we don't want to do that. But Google Maps is using both the satellite imagery as well as the street view that they use. Sometimes you see the Google Street View car. They drive down these routes. They drive down the highways, but they also sometimes carry them as a backpack or on a bike through urban areas and walking paths and biking paths. But they're going to use a general mix of satellite views, the street view footage, as well as user-driven data. So people who are driving around the road and experiencing slowdowns or reporting things like road closures, traffic construction, they're going to use that aggregated data to plot the best route for you. So on different days, it might be better to skirt down here. It looks like they're sending us down I-65 through Indianapolis, down to Louisville, down to Nashville, Atlanta, and then down to Orlando from there. But on a different day, it might shoot us straight down to Nashville based on the road conditions. And you can see here, it's giving us the construction zones on I-65. It's showing us crash data if there's a slowdown or if users are reporting it through Google Maps. Another thing that they kind of controversially launched in the last 3 years is you can now report speed traps. And if you're using Google Maps to navigate your route, they will warn you of an upcoming speed trap so you can slow down and not get a ticket. I don't know why that's controversial because it gets the same job done. You can also change the details of your route. You can send the directions to your phone. Changing the details of your route will usually ask you if you want to avoid tolls. Probably take you a significantly longer time than 17 hours and 59 minutes if you drove to Orlando without tolls. So that is how to plot a route. And sometimes it doesn't necessarily have to be for long travel. I've lived in the area for my whole life, and I will still use Google Maps because I don't assume to know what is going on the roads, especially at this time of year when winter's receding and potholes are everywhere and road construction is going. Sometimes we just want to get from one place to the other in the fastest amount of time. So let's say I need to go from here to Cook Memorial Library. I'm assuming that 21 is the best route to take, but if you look up Cook Memorial Library, it'll tell you, yes, 13 minutes straight. There's no road traffic. There's no anything. But let's say I want to take a different route. It's giving us recommendations, and you can drag your route through here. You can also add a destination, which is also very helpful. Let's say I want to go to Cook Memorial Library, but I really want to go to Taco Bell on the way. So I'm going to choose a destination here, and I'm going to make a pit stop at Taco Bell because I'm that shameless kind of person. All right, so it is sending me to the Gurney Taco Bell here, which is strange because I thought there was a Taco Bell somewhere in here. It might be closed. So they're going to send me to Taco Bell, and then I'm going to go to Cook Memorial Library. And you can add a lot of destinations. So that's a really fun way to plot a road trip. My partner and I, when we go on road trips, we like to stop at thrift stores. So we will plot our route from destination A to destination B with a bunch of Goodwills and St. Vincent de Paul's and Salvation Army locations on the way. And we have a lot of fun doing that. And Google Maps makes it really easy. But you can also see that we have the different options up here. It includes recommended travel mode, which is the, as the crow flies, to use an aphorism. But then there's also transit. So let's say, let's go to the Harold Washington Library in Chicago. And it's 53 minutes to drive, but I want to take the train. Looks like it's going to take me on the, is that the Milwaukee North Line? I believe it's the Milwaukee North Line. It's going to take me from the Waukegan Metro Station, and it's going to take me down to Union Station, and then it's going to recommend Chicago Metro line or Chicago Metro bus here to the Harold Washington Library. And that's really helpful. Also, they have walking paths, which is they use Street View to make sure that you're not going through any obstacles or any closed roads, biking paths, and then flights. Again, they're in beta right now, so you have to be approved as a beta user. And I hope that means that you show them their pilot's license, but we don't know about that. We'll see. It's not going to be important for us for a little while until we all have those flying cars. All right. So let me know in the chat if you have any questions about plotting your route or finding the best possible route. Again, this is going to look slightly different on your phone. It's going to be this bar here on the left of the screen, and it's going to be condensed down to the bottom of the map. And the map is going to be on the top of your phone. Depending on if you have an Android or iPhone, it should be relatively similar. If you have a Google Pixel like I do, everything is really nicely integrated. But again, it's a lot more difficult to turn off your location data, your data sharing, because it's all integrated on your phone. All right. One thing I'd love to show you too is some of the original Google Earth features that I remember playing with when I was younger on Google Earth here at the library. And that is our image layering. So if you look down at the bottom left of the screen here, you have the different layering images. It defaults to this view where you can very clearly see the roads as well as some of the destinations here. But you can, if you want, choose the terrain. And that shows you a little bit more of the natural terrain. You can see Illinois. Oh, yeah, absolutely, Joel. I can definitely do that. How to review using another stop like Taco Bell when using the phone app. I'll make sure that I open it up on my phone so I can walk you through it as well. But on terrain, and then you can click the map for the actual satellite image here. So you can see how this changes. And it shows us the actual real-time satellite image. The reason that this doesn't default is that it's a little harder to see these locations in the road. But I think this is really interesting, especially if you're looking at an area and seeing if you are walking for sure and you aren't sure if it looks like good terrain. I think it's really fun to look at some historical areas, especially some of this North Chicago areas here around the Forest Preserve or the Great Lakes Naval Center, or some of these beach areas. You can see just exactly what the beaches look like. But let's go ahead and look at Warren-Newport Public Library. And you can see it's an impressive view. You can see Warren-Newport Library here. There's Blackstone Street. There's Brookhaven Street. You can see the high school over here. You can see Gow Beach, otherwise known as the Pit, that we all used to swim at when we were kids. And there's the carriage house where my wife and I, my first apartment was. Yeah, it's really fun to use this satellite imagery. Another layer is transit, where it just isolates the transit. And then another layer is biking, where it highlights the bike paths. We're really blessed here with all of the Lake County Forest Preserve bike trails, the Des Plaines River Trail. This is really fun if you're a cyclist and you're really interested in finding a good bike path, finding a good circle. And then you can see how it travels around. So real quick, to add an additional destination on mobile, you're going to put in your first destination, whether it's your home or your work, and it's going to be the same sort of system where it is on the top bar. And then I don't know if you can see my screen, but there is a 3-dotted line at the top next to your location right here. And when you click that, there is a button that says add stop. And you can also search along route, add route to home screen, share directions, share location, and refresh just in case anything has happened. Sometimes you do need to refresh, like when you're on a long road trip, an 8-hour road trip, conditions will change. And if you don't have your settings on to automatically refresh and make recommendations, you could end up on a longer route than you realize based on road construction, accidents, slowdowns, etc. So on mobile, when you put in your location and then you hit directions and you put in that second directions, there is those 3 dots up at the top right that you can click next to your location. And the first option is to add another stop. And then you can see there's an additional stop option right there. And I have not found a limit to adding stops. You can just continually add stops to your road trip. Once you hit that stop, it'll actually usually refresh, and it'll ask you if it was correct or good destinations. It'll give you a rating system. It's like 5 little faces down at the bottom of the screen when you hit your ultimate destination. All right. So if you hit more here, you can see what I was talking about. I'll go back to the default. Street view is one of those things that's really fun to use. You can see I clicked on the street view, and all of these streets that are highlighted in blue are streets that have been reviewed by the Google Street View car, the Google Street View bike, or the Google Street View backpack. A lot of people think it's really fun to try to chase the Google Street View car to see if they could end up on Google Street View. But let's go ahead and find the library again. And let's check out the Google Street View of the library. So Google Street View is great. I always like to use Google Street View if I'm heading to an area that I'm unfamiliar with, because I can use the map. It can get me right there, but how do I know when I'm actually there? I'm a visual person, so I want to make sure that I see the destination so that I know when I'm there. So if I look at the library, here's the library, and you can see that this highlighted arrow here is showing me how I can move directionally. So I can move this way, which is south on Oak Plain Street. And then it'll give me the option usually of heading down Brookhaven here and into the library. And there is our beautiful library. Google Street View updates quite frequently, but it's really depending on your area. So there's our library. Rita has a question. Can you show how to find where you are when walking on a forest preserve trail, perhaps? Directions where you are in unfamiliar, not necessarily marked areas as in a state park. Well, especially if it's an emergency, the best thing you can do is turn on your location and allow Google to find you. if you have that data information on your phone. If you know the forest preserve that you're in, and even if you don't have your location on, or if you don't have connection through data or Wi-Fi, which you probably wouldn't have Wi-Fi, but you'd have data, you still should be able to pull up the atlas, the map on your phone. And then from there, so let's say I'm at the Rollins Savannah. You can type in the forest preserve that you're at, and it will show you the generalized trail. So even though these aren't roads, they will map out the trail. And you can see it's highlighted in blue, which means that they have full locations on the trail. So somebody has actually walked a Google Maps backpack through the Rollins Savannah Trail. And if you have, signal on your phone, you should be able to access all of this. Otherwise, if you don't have signal, it won't load that much, but it will show you this general map here. And here we'll go terrain, and we'll go satellite. So there's the satellite of the Rollins Savannah. And because we have that biking path on, it'll highlight the routes here. Does that answer your question, Rita? Awesome. That's a great question, Nina. So once you've arrived by train at the subway, how do you find the best way to walk to the museum? That's a really great question. So let's say that you are at Union Station in Chicago on South Canal. Let's go there now. We'll go back to standard. We'll turn off biking, and we'll turn off terrain just so it's a little easier to see. So here we are at Union Station. So we want directions from Union Station. So again, we'll start from Union Station here, and then we'll go over to turn off Street View, go to default map, and then we'll go over to the Art Institute of Chicago, which is pretty well walkable from Union Station. So the last thing I searched was public transportation. So this is giving me a bus route. Instead, we're going to click on walking. So that you see this image of the guy walking here. It will show you the quickest route walking. So it looks like they're taking us down Adams Street from across Lower Wacker here, and straight to the Art Institute of Chicago. Now, let's say we want to add a destination, and we want to go to the Field Museum, which is a little longer of a walk. It's going to give us the best walking route based on speed, or you can hit options here, and you can say, I want to avoid ferries. I want my distance in kilometers or miles, or it can be automatic here. And here, actually, this is an interesting one. You might need to open up more settings on your phone, but on browser, it can actually tell you the elevation, so you can know exactly how difficult of a walk is. It'll tell you the distance in miles, as well as the time it's going to take. So downtown, obviously, it's going to take a little longer, and they're going to be using other user data based on how quickly other people have walked to these destinations, or at least this distance in this area. So obviously you're going to be walking a little quicker at the Rollins Savannah than you are at different stoplights downtown Chicago. Nina, does that answer your question? I think it's a great tool. And on your phone, it switches really easily from one option to the other. You can see on my phone here, it's giving you the option. Right now it's selected to drive. If you click on that, it'll give you the option for public transportation, walking, and biking as well. That's a great walk too. You can stop at the Russian Tea Room. You can go to the Museum of Contemporary Art between the Field Museum and the Art Institute. And you can stop at Buckingham Fountain. So that's another thing you can actually drag to change the route. And you can do that manually instead of adding other distances. So you can say, I don't necessarily want to add Buckingham Fountain as a destination because I don't want it to really change, but I want to pass by it. You can do that on your phone as well. You can drag and you can change it. I want to take Congress instead of continuing on Michigan Avenue, or instead of the Art Institute, I want to go to Millennium Park. And you can see, because it's not a straight shot, you have to go upstairs. It's going to change this, and it's going to be reflected on the elevation too, which is really cool. I love using this for transit and destinations. It's really fun. It's a good time. I'll show you, actually. We'll go back out of incognito, and you can see I'm a very prolific tagger. And we'll go to this next, actually, if unless anybody has any questions. We'll transition from traveling from one destination to the other to exploring new destinations and saving information and navigating businesses like restaurants, hotels, gas stations, etc. So these are my tags. You're welcome to use your tags in any way. I tend to use the green flags for places that I haven't been but want to go. My hearts are places that I've been to before and I want to go again. And my stars are places of historical importance. So I places that I'm not necessarily going to make a repeat journey to, but especially if I want to show them to somebody, I'll put a flag down. And you can actually change the settings for all of these flags as well, to give you an alert if you're nearby. So like, if I'm ever driving by a coffee shop, or if I'm within distance of a coffee shop that I really like in the city, I can actually change it to notify me, to let me know, hey, you're by your favorite coffee shop. You want to stop by? Which can feel a little creepy and invasive if you're not ready for it. But if that's something that really floats your boat, you're welcome to try it. So let's go ahead and do a little exploration in that way. Does somebody want to put in in chat a place that they're interested in and they want to explore? Do a little bit of interactive exploration here. Any kind of cuisine that you want to see, if there's a place in the city that serves that kind of food, or a coffee shop or a museum. We'll do some exploration together. First person to put something in the chat, we'll go look at it. No takers? All right, let's go find my favorite coffee shop. We're going to go to Dark Matter Coffee. We're going to go to the mother shop. So we are here in the Ukrainian village, and I want to go to Dark Matter Coffee. I want a pound of coffee. I want a cold brew, and I might want a burger later at Fatsel's Last Stand, but we're going to start here at Dark Matter Coffee. So I know my destination, right? I clicked it. I can search it right here. It gave me a couple different branches. I knew which branch I want to go to. But it's going to give you all the information that Google has on them. And this is really the advancement that Google made that MapQuest, Apple Maps didn't really have, is that they had all of this information already aggregated from their website, and that they can add into Google Maps to make it a more complete experience. So we have the possibility to get directions. We're going to go ahead and save it, which is going to tell me I have to log in. So let's go ahead and get out of incognito mode. Dark Matter Coffee, the mothership on Northwestern. I've already got it saved. So if I wanted to save it, it gives me all of these options. Favorites, want to go, travel plans. Travel plans is really interesting because if you have a Google Calendar set up and you click on travel plans, it'll open up your calendar and it'll remind you to go there on this day, or it'll add it as a destination on your Google Calendar. Starred places. I have a list called recipes that I tag different restaurants where I have something that I want to make, and I can make other new lists. I forgot that I actually did that. I'm revealing a lot about me today, so this is an exclusive. And you can create different lists that you can make. So I'm actually working on a program for the summertime on Reverend Alexander Dowie, who is the founder of the city of Zion. It's kind of a crazy story. So I'm creating a list of different locations in Zion, Illinois to share. And I'm going to be using Google Maps for that project. So it's already saved in my favorite, which is why there's a heart on it. There's two locations pretty close by each other here. And because I have my location data saved here, it's telling me that I was there 4 weeks ago. It tells me their hours, like we saw earlier. It's got a website, a phone number. It's got information, geographical information, location. And then it actually offers information from the owner from the Dark Matter website. It tells me popular times. I can look at photos. There are Q&As that the business actually has access to that they can answer. And it's got a review system. So you can actually leave a review. You can contribute to all this data that is being aggregated to make Google Maps a better experience for everyone. There's different actually location tags, which helps with the search format. And these are different tags for the different reviews. So if you're looking for reviews about their coffee beans, you can click here. Bagged coffee, coffee roasting. They did a barrel aged coffee roast, which was really good. And then these are user driven pictures of the mothership, which is really fun and really cool to explore. And again, this is just the side information on your phone. It's going to be at the bottom of the screen while the map is on the top, and you can go back and forth between the other two. So let's say that I'm in the area, I've gotten my coffee, and I want to find something else in the area. Let's say I'm really hungry and I want to try a restaurant that I haven't had before. You can actually notice too, there's a difference between a lot of these places that they're recommending me and the places that they're not recommending me. They're recommending places that they think I'd like to go. So the places that they're showing versus the places that they're not showing are based on the data that they've already collected on me. So they're showing me the deli. They're showing me Archie's Iowa Rockwell Tavern. They're showing me places like Fatso's Last Stand where they think I'm going to go eat a hot dog because I've gone to places and eaten hot dogs quite frequently. So all of this is going to be aggregated from your data, from how you use Google Maps, how frequently you use Google Maps, and how much information you give them. It's going to be totally different if I open it up again in incognito mode. It's going to be a totally different map. They're going to show me totally different things because they don't know who I am. So here you can see they're showing me Lucy's. They're showing me a little bit of a fancier restaurant that I generally go to, but they're also starting to show me metric coffee because I have dark matter highlighted. So you can see how Google uses your information as you go to show you things that they want you to see. And that also means that they're sharing your information with other people so that they can turn a profit as a company. It's the double-edged sword of using something like this. So we want you at the library. We have no stake in the game. We want you just to be the most informed and prepared person that you can be when using this kind of tool. So let's say, and another thing to mention is if you see something like this that looks different, by law, if they're using Google Maps to advertise to you, they have to say it's an ad. So they will use a different icon. This icon here means that it's an ad, and you'll see down here in Farmers Pride Produce that it is in bold letters an advertisement. So this is not generated by my interest. It looks like it's probably an ad from Grubhub that they're partnering with Farmers Pride Produce, and they want me to order delivery from Grubhub. And a lot of times too, if you look for a restaurant, like I would really like Italian food, usually when you search this, there's going to be an ad somewhere in here. So just be cognizant that they're going to show you an ad. It's going to be interspersed in here somewhere or another. Of course, when you want to show somebody that an ad's popping up, then it's not going to show you. But let's try fast food. See, here we go. The first thing is McDonald's, and it's an ad. Now, chances are we were going to hit McDonald's anyway, and we did 2 down. But a lot of times you really want to be careful, and you want to be slow, and you want to be critical, because the first thing that pops up might be an ad, and it might not actually match your needs. There was a case a few years back where anybody who was looking up a locksmith, somebody had been using Google Maps ad services to advertise a fraudulent locksmith. So everybody was clicking on the first one, and it was a fraudulent locksmith. It was basically they would charge you an exorbitant rate and recommend that you bill your home insurance instead of just paying straight up for an inexpensive lock picking system, and then they would just drill your lock. The podcast Reply All actually did a podcast about it, an episode about it, and it was all about the city of Chicago and how Google's ad services was enabling this locksmith, and they had to get involved, and it was a big old thing. So just be critical when you're reading anything on the internet, news, blog posts, social media, and you can't even escape it when using a virtual map service. So just wanted to highlight that for y'all. That's how Google Maps is paying for this service. This incredible instant satellite feed of our entire globe is by selling these ads to McDonald's and to Grubhub. So any questions about that before we continue, go ahead and drop them in chat. I'm just going to go ahead and keep on exploring so you guys can see. When I have this search here, there's also these search filters. I can look by price, so inexpensive to really expensive. I'm almost tempted to click on really expensive fast food and see what comes up. Rating, this is user-driven rating, so take it with a grain of salt. You're going to want to check and see how many ratings. If there's only 3 ratings of 5 stars or 2 ratings of 2 stars, it's not a really accurate rating system, but you can see these different locations are rated with a lot of different ratings, different types of cuisine. You can search through here, as well as opening hours. This is really helpful if you end up in Chinatown after a convention at like 2 a.m. and you want to find a place at a certain price that's open a certain hour. And then here are all the different filters all on one screen. Yeah, Tommy, you can use Waze if you don't like Google Maps. Waze is very similarly data-driven. And the way Waze drives data is by user engagement. So I would say Google Maps, what Google Maps does really well is it's a kind of a combination of what MapQuest originally was and what Yelp was originally, whereas Waze is sort of like a map program mixed with a social media program. So if you use Waze, there's like challenges that you can use. There's you can get flair for interacting by posting like reviews of different routes, by reviewing things like traffic patterns and stuff. So it's a different option. Same thing with MapQuest is actually still active, or you can use a sat nav device like a Garmin or a TomTom, or I don't know if Magellan is still in business. I'd have to check, but there are alternatives to Google Maps for sure. You can see I like to check out a lot of restaurants, and there's a lot of places I want to go. You can also see that there are certain cities that I want to visit based on the collection of flags that I've put into the maps. All right. So back to the library. All right, so let's say that we want to find some interesting places to visit. You can actually search Google Maps through a menu. If you click on your places, it will automatically display every place on the map that you have saved, whether it's a flag, it's a favorite, it's a star, or an individual list. You can also look at your contributions. If I clicked on this, it would show me all of my different ratings. Sometimes if I've really liked a business, I'll post a photo of something I've eaten there so that people can see what the food looks like if it's really good. I can change my location sharing. I can show my timeline, and then I can interact again with my data in Maps. You can also print your maps. We do this all the time at the library. If you don't have access to Google Maps at home through your browser or your smartphone, feel free to come into the library sometime, and we can definitely help you look up directions as well as print out physical maps, because sometimes it's just the best way to do things. It doesn't depend on your phone battery. It doesn't depend on your network settings. We can definitely help you do that. At a certain level, this is where it gets a little meta. If you become a Google Maps user and a Google Maps contributor, meaning you're providing ratings, you're posting pictures of your location, sometimes you're doing stuff like scanning a location or reporting changes to Google or reporting inaccuracies. You can do stuff like add missing places. If you have a registered business, you can add your business or you can edit the map. There are actually, obviously this is only a short program. I'm going to wrap it up in a few minutes here and then open it up for some questions. But there are some really good user-friendly how-tos here. If you click on tips and tricks, get help or consumer information, you can change your language settings. Google, just same language settings that Google has for Translate. Google has an incredible search engine for Google Translate. We use it here at the library all the time. So if you want the map to display in a different language here, there's a lot of options. You can change your search settings to have more results per page. The more results that you change your settings to, it's going to be a little bit slower. Again, you can take off popular searches. You can change your spoken answers. It's a little bit more accessible, especially if you're driving alone. You don't want to be playing with your phone while you're driving. And then you can change your region settings as well. If you have your location off, this is important. In the past, when I've been traveling and I wanted to avoid roaming charges, when that was a thing, I would turn off my location, but then I'd have to make sure that my clock and my map was set to the location that I was in. Otherwise, it was going to default to the location that the phone was in the last time it was connected to network. I know that I'm missing things, so if there's any confusion or if there's any questions, please chip in and I will make sure that they get answered. We can also look for different places. There is a legend as well go ahead and just look that up so you can see. There should be. You can see what the different map legend looks like. There's just so many of them. Let me see if I can find where the symbols look like. But so Merit Club is a golf course. Academic institutions are going to have this. Forest preserves and parks are going to have, their own little legend here. There's quick links here, so you can click on the quick direction link or the quick save link here to visit this monastery and see some amazing, beautiful iconography. Lake Karina Fishing Pier. This is a nice little 1 mile loop that's really close to the library that I like to walk on my lunch breaks. I know that I'm missing things, so please jump on into the chat. I'll go ahead and enable audio in a few minutes if anybody wants to ask me a question in person. But in essence, yeah, that's how you use Google Maps. Search function, let's go ahead and look for museums. So in general, when you look for something, it's going to display a certain amount of options within this window. It might zoom out a little just to give you the most popular searches that are within your area. So we have the Best Bower Dunn Museum, we have the Waukegan Township Historical Society, we have the RBE Museum in Waukegan, which if you haven't been to the Ray Bradbury Museum, it's where I got this poster here. It's a really cool place to go. But another thing is if you drag out of here, it's not going to automatically show museums in this area unless you click search this area, because it wants to hold on to what you had over here initially. So if you want to continue going north, you want to make sure that you update it by clicking search this area. So we're going to go up to Kenosha and we're going to hit search this area, which is going to update for this area that we're in now. So that includes the Pritzker Archive. It's going to include the Anderson Arts Center, the Kenosha Public Museum, the Southport Light Station Museum. And then you can even zoom out and you can search this area, and it's going to isolate it to the most popular museums within this search area. So it's going to update again, and it's going to have stuff like the Grays Lake Heritage Museum, Pleasant Prairie History Museum, and then we'll zoom into Chicago and we'll search this area, and you'll see everything on the left is going to change. It's going to show us the Field Museum. It's going to show us the Science and Industry Museum. But because we're still up here, and it's because I have my location settings on, it's still going to be showing me the Best Bauer Dunn Museum, because it's all aggregating based on my experiences, my interests, location, and likelihood that I'm going to visit this place. A lot of times we will use Google Maps just as a visual reference for people. So if we tell someone, oh, we don't have that book, but Waukegan Public Library has that book, we can show them from here directions to the remote branch of the Waukegan Public Library at the field house. Oh, wrong field house, my apologies. So you can see this is how you get to the quickest place where you can register or retrieve materials from Waukegan Public Library, and that's at their remote branch at the field house. And you can see how much closer it is than, let's say, the downtown branch. There we go. All right, we are just at about 8 o'clock. I can stay for as long as anybody needs. The library closes at 9, but that is going to be the end of the program. Let me go ahead and bring my information back up if anybody needs my contact information. Oh, Gloria, can I work my CarPlay with an Apple phone, but I want Google Maps? CarPlay. I'm not familiar with CarPlay. Oh, yeah. So there are websites that show how to use Google Maps and navigation with Apple CarPlay. I'm sorry, I'm a Google Pixel user, and in the past I've been an Android user. I've never had an iPhone, but yeah, you can use both. There are several websites that can walk you through that. You need to make sure that Google Maps is installed on your phone. It is available in the Apple App Store. Apple doesn't, they understand that most people are going to be users, and Apple Maps was kind of a failed attempt at their version. You need to connect CarPlay by connecting your iPhone to your compatible vehicle, and then locate Google Maps on your CarPlay screen and launch it with a tap. So you should have it downloaded, and it should show up on your CarPlay. And you can use the turn-by-turn directions on CarPlay, and you can use it by voice, or you can tap the screen and hit add destination. Does that help? Yeah, awesome. There's some really good step-by-step instructions. If you ever want to stop by the reference desk, we can print those out for you as well. Again, we planned this this session months and months and months ago, and we didn't know when what the COVID-19 numbers were going to be like, so we opted for safety. If in the future anybody would like to do this in person with laptops in our flex space so that we can do a little bit of troubleshooting and playing around, please let us know, and if we get enough interest, we can definitely offer it again. Thank you all so much for coming. I really appreciate talking about all this stuff. It is one of my things that I get really excited about. So I'm grateful for you all to come and interact with Google Maps. Any other questions? Thanks for coming, Caitlin. I really appreciate it. Joel, thanks for coming. And I still owe you a copy of The Hobbit. I haven't forgotten. If you like the melodious sound of my voice, I also run the Wednesday night nonfiction and fiction book discussions. So look into that. We're going to be reading an exciting book next time around called The Immortalists. Tommy, thanks for coming. Gloria, thanks for coming. I'm grateful for y'all for coming. If you ever want one-on-one, thank you, Nina. I really appreciate that. That means the world to me. I am here at the library all week. If you ever want to come in and chat about Google Maps at the reference desk, I'm here. Just ask for the Google Maps guy. But I mean, anybody at the reference desk can help you out. There, we have a wonderful team here, and we love any tool that's going to help foster your imagination and creativity and break down barriers to access different cool places. So. Last call for any questions. All right. I'm really grateful for y'all. I hope you have a great night and happy exploring.